Thank you all. Oh God, what am I doing here? I kept telling everybody to be cool, and I knew I was going to have to be up here. I've been following pretty blondes all my life now. I'm Phil, and I'm an addict and an alcoholic.
Hi, Phil.
My real name is Father Philip Kendal. Father tells you what I do for a living. I'm a Roman Catholic priest, and much to my surprise, to the amazement of many of my friends, and the disgust of my enemies, I still am a priest. I shouldn't be, from what I know inside that I did. Kendal tells you where I come from. It's a mixed bag of German and French and American Indian and a little bit of everything. And I can't blame that for what I did. And it's a miracle that I'm standing here before you. And I try to live right now. And I thank God that I've got this moment right now. Because I didn't want it. I didn't want to be alive. I tried to kill myself many a time. For you to understand what a miracle it is, I have to go back into the past. But only so that it tells you where I am now. I grew up in a family. My sister been on the Alcoholics Anonymous program 16 years before I got on. There's just two of us in the family. We sat down after I got sober and figured it out that we were both born 9 months after New Year's Eve during Prohibition. So we figured we both started out drunk. We drank in our family. My grandfather was a great big Alsatian that drank beer and everything else. And it was a sign of being a man, 5 years old, to be able to drink at home, to drink with the adults. I wanted to be something I wasn't. That's how I was. I could be anything you wanted me to be. So much so I didn't know who the hell I was. And I began pretending at an early age. And I began demanding things of other people. I demanded love from my mother and father, and when they didn't give it the way I wanted, I cut them out of my life. I'll never forget how amazed one psychiatrist was when he said, "You mean you paid your own way through grammar school, 6th and 7th grade, 8th grade? I didn't want anything from them. I was going to do this all by myself." And I tried. When I was 13 years old, I had a job loading trucks at 711 South Dearborn Street, and I don't know what the street is in Wichita, but there's a street in every town. South State Street in Chicago is where all the burlesque houses are. And my sex education began in a freight elevator in 711 South State Street when I was 13 years old. Drinking beer with the guys after work in the burlesque houses, and going home to the south side of Chicago and being the good altar boy. I began living two lives very early, and it began to take a lot of things to shut down that gnawing inside of me that says I was lying. I was lying in my life. And I began getting in trouble with alcohol first when I was 13 and 14 years old. There's a rite of passage to adulthood on the south side of Chicago. The lake is held back by big cinder blocks from the steel mills. And drinking beer on the rocks was one of the rites of passage. And if I'd known then what I know now, I'd have known that I was in trouble, because I could always win those contests, chug-a-lugging quarts of beer and throwing up all over the parish priest at the weekly dance. I never got my act together in school. I went to the Irish Christian Brothers, and I still have the marks on my back to prove it. Until I got to be about third year high school. I'd already been in trouble of taking ladies home from the Christmas parties at work with great expectations, and being read out by some little Polish man that said I should be an athlete. I was an athlete, but I also loved my beer and the hard liquor by that time. My father only said one thing to me, that I was breaking my mother's heart. I didn't know I was breaking his too. But I drowned that in hard liquor. By the time I was in senior year of high school, I found out that you could get strokes from people if you studied in school. And God had blessed me with a good brain that I haven't too far destroyed. I still know who I am. And I started getting good marks in school and winning scholarships to college. And I thought I was getting my act together. I graduated finally fourth in my class after almost flunking out of the first year of high school. I lost the only woman I ever proposed to by being drunk at the senior prom, though. And I thought I was getting my act together by myself. I was going to pay my own way to college. I'd already won the scholarship. And God sent me a physical affliction that I still have. It's migraine headaches. They're histaminic cephalgia. Something goes on in the veins in my blood. I get allergic to my own blood about every 2 years. And I was introduced to mind-altering drugs at 17 years old. And I gave up beer. And I don't remember, it's too long ago, what they gave me, but I took everything they gave me. And I started going to the hospital at 17, and I was in the hospital every 18 months to 2 years from the time I was 17 to the time I was 45 years old. I didn't need any help to live this life. Just every 18 months to 2 years I had to go in and crash. And I didn't have to worry about dirty needles. Pretty little girls put clean needles in my arms. And I learned you could do it legal that way. And I could have a lot of sicknesses. I heard Martin say the other day he had a PDR, Merck Index. I always used to look up the symptoms and find out what I was supposed to look like to get that kind of pill. And I could. I was a very good liar, but I lied to myself first of all. Because every time I lied, I got emptier inside. Because I knew what I was doing. And I needed these things to blot out my memory and to blot out that gnawing inside of me. I needed all the booze I could get, all of the pills I could get. Because then I didn't have to remember what I was doing with my life. I was lying. And I'd been angry with God because he had never done it my way. And I had fought him all my life. I'd had a conscious contact with God every day of my life. I hated him. I did not want to be here. I did not want it to go this way. I wanted people to be kind to each other and to love each other. And they didn't. And that made me angry. And it still does. That's why this week has been so beautiful. To see honest people really loving and caring. That's the way I always wanted to live. And I didn't know how until you taught me. You taught me how. I started out at 17 on the drugs and I never gave them up. I learned all the ways to get them. Always with a note from the doctor, always with a script. And my anger at God when I was about 20, because my life hadn't gotten any better. I was an electrical engineer then. I'd gone through a college. And my life was getting worse. All my friends were getting married, and I didn't want to share my life with anyone. It was so rotten. I probably saved a lot of ladies from a lot of grief. There were some ladies that did have grief later on. So I decided, as I always did when I was defying God, that I'd be the best thing that I knew how to be, and he better make it better. So I started studying for the priesthood. Insane. If I wanted to play God, what better place? If you couldn't beat him, you might as well join him. But you see, that made the lie bigger, because I knew inside I wasn't God. And yet in the position that I finally came to, I had lots of control over other people's lives. And I messed up a lot of people, laying heavy guilt trips on people that I couldn't even handle myself, taking my anger out at God on the people who came to me for help. A lot of hypocrisy. I almost cried last night when Mom gave me this. I was telling somebody at the dance, 15 or 20 years ago, I stopped wearing religious medals around my neck because they burned. The hypocrisy had gotten so big. This is the first medal I've worn around my neck, and I really feel proud to wear it. And with the help of God, they'll bury me in it, I hope. I believe now. But I started in the seminary, and somebody asked me in the AA clubs, well, how in the hell did you do that? Well, of course, you're not supposed to drink in the seminary. And I didn't drink in the seminary, except every time I could. It wasn't my choice I wasn't drinking, it was their choice. I wanted to. And of course, pill taking is all right in the seminary if you're sick, and I was sick, always sick. Because I was in the hospital every 18 months. And I got good grades, and I kissed the right places, and I was doing well in school. And like any practicing addict, I worked harder than hell to be loved and to achieve and to be the tops. Because, baby, that's all I had. I didn't have anything from inside saying I was okay, I really belonged. I had to have everybody tell me. I had to line you up behind me, and if you didn't get behind me and follow me, you got out of the way, because I'd roll over you. I didn't have to hit you. I could destroy you with my mouth. And I was fast enough to destroy a lot of people. I had our seminary rector kicked out of his job. I went to Rome. They taught me too much about how the program worked. And it's funny, when you go make amends to people like that, he says, oh, what the hell, I wanted out anyway. He says, you guys were too much anyhow. And they wouldn't ordain me. They were smarter than I was. They wouldn't ordain me, and I had my act together, I thought. I'd clean my life off of almost every sin. Except lying. Except lying. And I thought, as I did when I was 17, I was 28 then, that I had it all together by myself, and that they had to ordain me. And God sent me another reminder that he was in control, not me. He sent me cancer. About 3 months before I was supposed to be ordained, I had cancer, and they amputated my left leg. And I got very angry at God, and very high on morphine. I can remember telling them in the hospital they could take that leg and the other leg and this arm, but not this one. I needed something to take with. I needed something to pop pills with or to drink with. I was living just a drug. That was the only thing that kept me alive. And I made it through with the amputation without cracking a tear, without showing an emotion. Strong and cool. I was stoned. I found out later that 2 nurses got demoted and almost lost their jobs because I had conned them into giving me the shots of morphine more often than they should have in the hospital. But I do remember when they finally found it out and they cut me off, I did 10 days standing on one leg, detoxing from morphine, and I never wanted to go through that again. And the night they released me from the hospital was New Year's Eve. I had a peg leg, crutches, and I had just gone through 10 days of detoxing from overdose of morphine. in the hospital. I never saw Christmas or New Year's. I got drunk on wine that night to celebrate that I had done it all by myself. And they started giving me Doradin, and I started going into deep depressions, and then they introduced me to Quaalude. That was 1960. Ah, yes, Quaalude. From then until 1978, I had Quaalude. 1977, I'll tell you about that. And they introduced me to Imprim with codeine, and I remembered I had to have that in the cough syrup when I was a kid. And here they had it all packaged up. I didn't have to drink that crap. It didn't taste bad at all, except when they melted in your mouth. And I started on codeine, and I went from Imprim number 2 to Imprim number 4. It never was enough. It never was enough to stop the restlessness, the emptiness, to fill me up inside. Never. There were not enough people. There were not enough pills. There wasn't enough alcohol made that could fill up that emptiness. But in God's ironical way, they figured if I could go through an amputation without breaking down and having a psychotic break, I had those later, I could be ordained, and they ordained me on a wooden leg. And I got drunk that night to celebrate. And I got into the hospital. It was funny, being within 3 months after I was finally ordained, I, the guy that they didn't think was going to make it through the seminary, they had a change in command in our religious order, and I became a seminary professor. God works in strange ways. And I went back and took another degree. I had degrees in electrical engineering and physics, and law, and theology. One more graduate degree, and I'd have died drunk and drugged. Brains don't do it. I thought I was so smart. I knew all the answers before you asked the damn questions. My students always say I never gave them a chance to ask the whole question. No, I was afraid I wouldn't know the answer if they asked the whole thing. I'd stop them halfway through and answer them with what I knew. And I knew everything, and I got the impression that I knew everything. And I took a doctorate, and I would go and I'd teach in the morning, and I'd come home and I wouldn't have anything to do, so I'd take my codeine, and I'd sleep until cocktail time. And I'd drink myself to sleep every night. And I'd get up in the morning and I'd teach again. Most times blacked out. I'd had blackouts for 20 years before people told me what they were, because I never told anybody. I was like Julie. I thought I was going crazy. Missed days, missed nights, missed weeks. I've taught whole classes blacked out for hours, not knowing what the hell I said, and trying to cover it up. One of the funniest things was trying to explain to my boss, the provincial in Chicago. I was in Washington, D.C. at that time. Wilbur Mills and I frequented the same burlesque houses, but at different times. I was coming out of burlesque houses at 3 o'clock in the morning and saying Mass at 7. And it didn't bother me at all, so long as I was drugged. I didn't have too many hangovers and headaches because codeine takes all that away. The only time I had all my shit together was when I was constipated because I'd taken too much codeine. I wasn't even close to having it all together, but I had to keep creating that impression. I had created the impression that I knew it all and that I could handle everything. And I couldn't. I wasn't. Not inside. It kept getting emptier and emptier. Every lie I told made it emptier inside. And I remember one week I was out with a family, and I disgraced and ruined a lot of families and children. I can always remember the grace before meals, but I wasn't conscious by the time we finished. I can remember going out one Sunday afternoon. We were sitting in the house drinking, and by that time I was into Rusty Nails. The Rusty Nail was half an 8-ounce glass of scotch, half Drambuie. Don't put the ice in it. I didn't want it diluted. In some hostesses in Washington, D.C. and in Kansas City still call me Rusty Nail. I'd identified with the drink because that's all I was. was booze and alcohol and the pills. That's all there was to me. In the Sunday afternoon, the last thing I remember before the Wednesday was sitting and watching a football game, drinking Rusty Nails, and I blacked out. And they say that they had to tow the car away the next morning from where I lived. I was out for 2 more days because it didn't have a front end on it, didn't have any fenders, didn't have any grill, and the radiator was wrapped around the block. And it was parked where it should have been parked. And the way I felt, I'd carried it home that night because they had to tow it away. They couldn't drive it. To try and explain how that happened to my boss in Chicago and why we had to buy a new car when we didn't have the money to buy a new car. And I was blacked out. I didn't know what the hell had happened. And I lied. Somebody had hit it in the parking lot. Sure as had hell do a lot of damage to a parked car. But what was going on inside was that I'd killed somebody that night, or one of those days. And I can remember for months afterwards, and still in my mind I do it occasionally, when I'm wanting to do a bad trip on me. I go back over that route looking for blood, any route I could have taken home from those people's houses. I don't know. I wasn't there. And this kept on all the way through the 60s, and I did it to the Mayo Clinic, and the only time I was involved with Valium was this one psychiatrist at the Mayo Clinic gave me a prescription for it, and I was just detoxing from Demerol, and I did most of this on my own. I threw up all the way over the East Coast, all the way up from Washington, D.C. to Minnesota, detoxing from Demerol. I didn't know what the hell was happening. And he gave me a prescription for Valium, and I took them all that night, the whole bottle. And I had an allergic reaction to them and got in a hot shower, and I ended up in an ice blanket for a week. And they suggested that I go to psychiatric wards after that. And all through the 60s and 70s, I went to psychiatric wards. Madder than hell. One psychiatrist at Mayo's, I can get very violent when I'm very angry. And I put him up against the wall, and they asked me to leave because I thought he was stupid. He said my headaches were caused by my amputation. I said, the goddamn thing came 11 years later. But I never told anybody honestly how I felt inside. I didn't want anybody to know. My isolation had begun long before. But I made everybody dependent upon me. I did more work. I conned more people. And we put together a school of theology, and they damn near elected me president. But I think God started working against my will in my life then. I refused it and moved to Kansas. I did the geographical cure, and 6 years later I sobered up. 6 years. And I came to Kansas, and the bishop gave me the job as the ecclesiastical judge for the whole state of Kansas, which I still am. Amazing. I taught in the college, and he gave me a beautiful job for an addict, a hospital chaplain. All those doctors, all those prescription pads. In 72 and 73, it started coming sooner than 18 months now when I was crashing. In 72 and 73, I crashed, overdosed. I don't even remember what. I remember Tylenol, I remember Talwin and Percodan, and I always go back to codeine. Always go back to that. In 75, I nearly killed myself on something called DHE45. It's an intravenous drug they give to take your blood vessels down, and I overdosed on that. I nearly blew all the internal organs I've got. But I always survived. And I always was mad at God for surviving because I wanted to die. I didn't want it to hurt so much anymore inside. And people would tell me I gave good sermons, and I never remembered what I did. And I would get angry at them for saying that because I knew that's not the way I felt inside. So in 75, I did the beer cure. I switched from rusty nails to screwdrivers and started drinking all day long. And by the time I finished, I was up to a half a gallon of vodka a day. And the thing that finally happened to me, I did not do this. They did it to me. The 4 doctors who were giving me prescriptions got together one time. And they called all the pharmacists in town. And the one doctor who is now my sponsor called me in and said that they were cutting me off from everything. And I wasn't going to be able to get anything. And God bless him, he offered to support me through any treatment center I wanted to go through. I told him to kiss off. I told him I could do this all by myself. That was May 9th, 1978. The reason that they had caught me was I was trying to fill a prescription. I was getting my pills in pint bottles by that time, 200 Imprim number 4, 200 Qualubes at a time. The Qualubes were up to 77 because there was a drug bust down here in Wichita that screwed up my scene in Kansas City. They all got scared for giving me 200 at a time. I had to pay a little bit more under the counter than what I paid over the counter. May 9th, they cut me off of everything. And I can only go back to my checkbook and find out I was buying half gallons of vodka by the case about every 4 days from a nice little secretary in the Chancery office where I worked. I always had a case of half gallons of vodka in my trunk. I never hid anything. I just threw them in the trash. I didn't have anything to hide that way. I had no way to hide it. The 18th of May, I had my last drink. The pills had gone 9. Okay. Red and gray Plymouth Valiant, Missouri license EPM 508. Better move it or they'll tow it. Red and gray Plymouth Valiant. Nobody owns it. The 18th of May, 1978, I was starting to detox from the pills because it had been 9 days, and I didn't know what the hell was happening to me. And I was consuming more and more vodka every day until I was paralyzed one night, and they hauled me into the emergency room. It wasn't the first time they'd hauled me into the emergency room of the intensive care, but this time I told them how I really felt. I was honest for the first time. I'd used up every other avenue of escape. I had nowhere else to go. One of the 4 doctors who I had been using put me in the hospital, and he started giving me pills, Tofanol and all this other crap, and I refused to take them. I don't know why. I was just so mad at him. And the Thursday after that, and I lose sense of time now, the Thursday after that, it was a race between whether he was going to discharge me or I was going to discharge myself in the hospital where I was chaplain. And he discharged me, and the hallucinations and the DTs and the convulsions started that night and lasted for a good week until I ended up in the closed psychiatric ward at KU Medical Center. And they took my wooden leg away from me, they took my crutches away from me, and they locked me in a padded cell with just one of those backless wonders. And that was my bottom. I didn't have anything left. You try to pace off the DTs with one leg. And they watched me. And they kept me there for a whole month before they were ready to send me to treatment. And they wanted me to send me to a treatment with a bunch of priests, and I said, no way. And they sent me to Topeka. Thank God. I was born in Topeka almost 48 years ago. I was born again in Topeka about 2.5 years ago. I started this program angry at you and at God and at everything else because you'd taken away everything I had to live with. And I didn't know how I was going to live, and I knew God didn't like me. And you said, the God of your understanding. I said, you do not want to know about the God of my understanding. You do not want to hear the way I think he is. He's supposed to be a loving God, and look at all the crap that happens in this world. He's supposed to care. And they bring dead babies into the hospital. And dead young people. spaced out on dope. And I was angry. And I still have the picture from when they admitted me to the treatment center, and it's anger. And I was angry. They kept me in 8 weeks in there. And my prognosis was, they didn't think I'd be alive. I went to my first AA meeting. I was a drug addict, but that's all I knew. My sponsor was a drug addict and an alcoholic too, but that's all he knew. And I've been going ever since. And I said, all right, I will do what you tell me to do, defiantly, but it better get better. Because if it doesn't get any better, I will kill myself. I know how. And this time, being clean, I'll know how to do it right. And it got better. It didn't get better very fast. If I'd had a spiritual awakening like Bill W. did, you wouldn't be able to talk to me. You'd have to visit me in my shrine in Kansas City. God knows my ego, and so it just comes in little bits and pieces, and it's come a lot in these last couple of days, seeing people love each other, seeing people care. It was 8 months. The alcoholic compulsion was taken away immediately. The drug, I had a hard time passing drugstores for about 8 or 9 months after that. They told me they'd only give me aspirin for my headaches in the treatment center. I got out and started scarfing down the bottles full of aspirin. I was up to about 150 of them a day until I finally poured them out one night with the night nurse that everybody hated in the treatment center. And see, I hadn't slept very much. I used that treatment center 24 hours a day. That's one of the things when you stop dead like that, you don't sleep for a long time. And they said, oh, you'll sleep someday. The shakes and the sweats will stop someday. And I said, they'd better stop. And they have. And the pain stopped, the physical pain that I had and still have from time to time when I don't do my program. It's kind of nice. I hated it, but it's kind of nice. It warns me when I'm not doing my program. My back and my shoulder stiffens up, and I become like armor again, and you can't get through. And I hurt. I do it to myself when I'm not doing my program. But it got better, and you taught me about God more than I'd ever learned in the seminary. I could prove to you rationally that God existed, hell yes, but I had never felt him inside me. I never felt he really cared. I do now. I've seen people love each other. I've seen people care. I've seen myself care for people and cry when people, I'm not very good on 12-step calls alone. My first 2 pigeons are dead. The third one is laying in a bed like a vegetable, has been for a year. That's God's will. I have serenity, or whatever serenity I have, is because I accept this moment for what it is. Like it says in the Serenity Prayer. I never accepted anything in my life. I had to accept the fact when they said it got better, I said, well, hell, my leg never grew back on again. And they told me, well, nothing else fell off, did it? And nothing else has. And they told me to practice these principles in all my affairs, but honestly, inside, I found out I had to end most of my affairs. I didn't know whether I was going to stay a priest or not. I had a lot of guilt and remorse because when I sobered up, I realized what I had done. All the one-night stands, all the burlesque houses, all the searching for love in all the wrong places, trying to manipulate this life. And there was a lot of remorse, but about 8 months after I sobered up, it dawned on me that I didn't give up anything. I didn't give up the booze. I did not give up the pills. They took them away from me. I wanted to die, and I was mad when I was alive. And it dawned on me that it was God that did it. And I said, all right, buddy, if you can handle all that crap I did, all that hypocrisy I did in my life, And it's okay with you. It's okay with me. I had to do everything I did to be right here with you today. To know what I know, so that I know it's a miracle. I should not be alive. Every time I get a medical examination and tell them what my past has been, they say, you should not be alive. I says, I know that. I did not want to be alive. So I accept the fact that I'm here. And there's a lot of times I still get angry with God because he hands me more than I can handle, I think. More than I can handle, always. Not more than he and I can handle together. And I say to him, well, you got me here. You keep me here. And I say please every morning and thank you every night. By the grace of God, I haven't had a drink or a pill for over 2.5 years. And after 30 years of that, that's a miracle. Because I had not lived without a drink or a pill every day for 30 years before that. I did not know how I was going to live, and you taught me how to live. You told me I was only responsible basically for making me happy. I wanted to make everybody happy. I wanted everybody to love me, and I didn't love myself. I do what I want to do now. I do what's good for me now, because that's God's will too. This halt, I've been telling all these people on the panel to halt this week. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, those are the first milestones back to the booze and the pills for me. If I get too hungry, I get too angry, I get too lonely or too tired, I'm in trouble. And I needed to know that. I needed to know that I had to take care of myself first, because I'm the only thing that God has given me. And I may not have all of my members, and I'm sure I don't have all of my marbles. And I'm not as good a person as I want to be. I see these guys here that have been in here for so long, and I want to be that way. But I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be, according to God, and I've got to accept that. And so if it isn't any better today, that's okay. It's better than it was yesterday, because I'm almost to the end of the talk, and I don't have to worry about it after I'm finished. God has been good to me, and he's been good to every one of you too, I know, or you would not be here. And I used to pray. I didn't used to pray. I used to give orders. And now I don't ask for anything, because by damn, when I woke up in the treatment center, I did not know what to pray for. I did not expect I would be here, because I agreed with their prognosis for me that I was not going to make it. I did not know that I was going to be able to touch a lot of people's lives, Ron included, to be able to be here. And that's just the way it's gone. So long as I hang loose and stay out of the damn way, God uses me. Sometimes I get awful nervous when he uses me in the places he sends me. But if I hang loose, he'll take care of me. If I don't get in the way, my self-will can destroy me if I start getting in the way. My sinning wasn't any different than anybody else's. My life is not much different than anybody else's. I try to do the best I can every day. And when I goof and make a mistake, I say, I'm sorry. I'll try to do better. I've begun to realize who I am and what I have to offer, that God has given me, but I've got to use it. If I can talk at a meeting like this, if he gives me some continuity of thought still, in a program that touches anybody, the newcomer, the old comer, that's his will for me today. But I've got to use that. I cannot sit on my behind. I've got to use it. I've got to give it away. My sponsor and I ask all your prayers, my sponsor and I are opening a treatment center this fall, we hope. And we're not hiring anybody. We're not hiring anybody, the people who haven't been there, that know and understand. Because if you hadn't understood me, I'd be dead. If you hadn't loved me, I'd be dead. And all I know to do in return is to love you. And I love you all. I thank God for you being here. Every day, each moment, I ask God to be with me. Sometimes I push him out of my life, and I pay the penalty. But thank God he's been with me enough to keep me clean and sober this long. I have faith now. I didn't have it before. My sister said, start praying for parking places, little things. And it works. It works. Don't pray for a mountain to move. Pray for little things and become aware of the little coincidences in life, and there's been a lot of them this meeting. I've been here because I let go, and I met a lot of people that taught me a lot of things that I needed to hear because I did let go. I don't know what the hell's going to happen tomorrow. I don't even know if I'm going to make it home tonight. But that's okay. I'm here right now, and I'm in love with you and in love with God. And that's a big change. God bless you all. Thank you.